Heads to the polls in November this year, the first ever mostly digital National Democratic Convention has officially kicked off in Milwaukee. The four-day virtual affair with delegates and speakers scattered across the country has one united mission, and that is to help former Vice President Joe Biden defeat President Donald Trump in the November elections. The United States has held presidential nominating conventions for almost 200 years, and they have served in recent decades as an important televised introduction to each party's candidate in the final months before the election. These party conventions before the elections are a platform for presidential candidates to directly speak to and connect with voters. However, this year it will be a political event unlike any other seen by Americans. The coronavirus pandemic had earlier forced the Democratic Party to postpone the convention by a month. The outbreak has also forced the convention to go largely online instead of it being physically hosted in Milwaukee as is norm. The four-day convention will formally nominate former Vice President Joe Biden as the Democratic presidential candidate for the November 3rd elections and Indian-origin Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate. The convention will feature a lineup of heavyweight politicians, rising stars, and everyday Americans making the case for why Joe Biden should be elected the U.S. president. Former First Lady Michelle Obama, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo are among the headliners for the first night that is being moderated by actress Eva Longoria. The focus remains on the pandemic as well as an economic crisis in the United States and the rising protests against racism in the country as well. In fact, the former First Lady backed Biden's bid to the White House, saying that the former vice president will, and I quote, tell the truth and trust science. In excerpts of her remarks released ahead of her taped speech, Michelle Obama said that Biden knows what it takes to rescue an economy, beat back a pandemic, and lead the country.
I know Joe. He is a profoundly decent man, guided by faith. He was a terrific vice president. He knows what it takes to rescue an economy, beat back a pandemic, and lead our country. And he listens. He will tell the truth and trust science. He will make smart plans and manage a good team. And he will govern as someone who's lived a life that the rest of us can recognize.
Now, for more details on this one-of-a-kind Democratic convention, our correspondent Jagriti Dave is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Jagriti, a very warm welcome to you. Now, I'd like to start our discussion by talking about the format of this first-of-its-kind Democratic convention. It's completely virtual, and it seems that the COVID-19 pandemic has truly changed the way we view these conventions. Now, some of the biggest political figures will be telling us why Biden is their presidential candidate, including Michelle Obama and Bernie Sanders. So tell us, what can we expect?
Well, the first day of the convention has kicked off, and how it started, really it's very different from what you normally would see. Throughout this convention you would normally see packed arenas. You will get balloon drops and confetti at the end of the candidate's speech. You have people in interesting hats and interesting dresses, real characters on the scene. You're not getting any of that. The convention actually started with Eva Longoria, the actress, moderating, emceeing the event, and it really just looked like a sort of a television presentation. And you heard from ordinary Americans from across the country on the issues that affected them. So you heard from a small business owner, you heard from a farmer, you heard from a teenager who's an activist. You heard about the issues that affect them and why they are choosing to back Joe Biden. It's very different from the ordinary format of a convention. And of course, as you say, this is all virtual. It's a one of a kind. Normally this would have been held in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, but instead Joe Biden is going to be delivering his speech from his home state of Delaware. Michelle Obama, you played an excerpt from her speech. We're going to hear from her later on. But, you've got some big names. And interestingly today, what you're going to see is names like Bernie Sanders, who comes from the left wing, the progressive wing of the party. But you're also going to hear from several former Republicans who are also backing Joe Biden, which is the Biden campaign and the Democrats' attempt to show that Joe Biden is leading a broad coalition of voices.
Right. Now, my second question, now one of the biggest and most anticipated speeches, of course, is that of former First Lady Michelle Obama. Experts released say that this may be her sharpest and most overtly political message in her public life. So tell us more about this.
Well, Michelle Obama, if you remember, in 2016 gave a real standout speech using that refrain, when they go low, we go high. So we are expecting to hear something quite special from her, because she is known to be an excellent speaker that has the ability to connect with ordinary people. And it's that sort of touch, that common touch that Michelle Obama has, that is part of what Joe Biden hopes is going to help voters set the stage for voters to connect with him. Michelle Obama does, and the Obamas in general, have avoided real overtly political attacks. So it remains to be seen how sharp her speech, her address is going to be. But she is going to focus a lot on Joe Biden's experience and history as vice president, working with Barack Obama. But she's also going to talk a lot about Joe Biden as a person, how she describes him as a decent person. She describes him as empathic because of his own personal experiences with the death of his son, for example. So these are the characteristics that she is going to bring to the fore, and to contrast those with those of President Donald Trump.
Right. Now, can you also tell us a little bit more about the theme this year? It's called We the People, I believe, and it is dubbed We the People because it will be focused on how the country can unite and move forward, something that is crucial given the damage wreaked by the pandemic on the US economy.
So yes, this is a refrain by the Biden campaign, this idea of unity. And as I mentioned, the fact that you're hearing diverse voices from across the different wings within the Democratic Party. We're hearing from progressives, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Right. You're going to hear from centrists. You're going to hear from former, establishment figures, and you're going to hear from former Republicans. It's the Democrats in Joe Biden's campaign are trying to present himself as a united party. None of the divisions that we saw in 2016. That is what the Democrats are hoping to convey. So over the next few days, as we hear speeches, it'll be interesting to see whether the speakers manage to coalesce behind this theme of unity themselves. And of course, the themes of the pandemic, of racial injustice, a lot of these themes in practice have divided the country. And clearly, those being front and centre of the Democratic National Convention are hoping yet again to show that the Democrats, from their perspective, they want to show themselves as the ones to heal those divisions. Right. Again, whether those speeches from those different wings, from those different voices are able to do so is another matter, but that's what we're going to see over the next 4 days as to whether they can achieve that.
All right, my final question, of course, involves our current US president, that is Donald Trump. Now, he has certainly broken from a convention in trying to rally support at the same time as a Democratic convention is taking place. So is the Trump administration worried about losing its voter base?
So the Trump administration, the Republicans, the GOP have scheduled a series of events for the president in an attempt to take some of the limelight away from Joe Biden and the Democrats. So today, he was in Wisconsin and Milwaukee. He was in Wisconsin, and he was in Minnesota. Minnesota, obviously, the state where George Floyd was killed, and that sparked those protests across the country. And Wisconsin, where the state where the Democratic National Convention was supposed to have been held. And he gave rallies, albeit small rallies. They weren't huge, kind of packed, crowded events, again, because of concerns because of coronavirus concerns. But President Trump is clearly trying to take the light away from Joe Biden, trying to criticize him, his competency to run for president, his ability, questioning his record. At the same time, trying to promote his own handling of the pandemic, once again criticising mail-in voting, all those similar things that we hear him say whenever he gets onto the podium. So this is something that we're expecting to see as the Democratic National Convention is underway over the next few days. Right.
Jagriti, thank you so much for joining us and all your inputs on the story. We at WION, of course, will bring all the updates to our viewers on the underway Democratic Convention. And now